magical hands and welcome to the channel. If it's your first time, thank you for stopping by, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back. So before we get into the tutorial proper, I wanted to explain a few things. For the fabric that I used a regular Ankara fabric, an African print fabric, and I used 4 yards. Mind you, I did not exhaust the whole 4 yards, so I would advise you get at least 3.5 yards, at least 3.5 yards for this project, because it's a wide leg romper jumpsuit and it has no joining around the waist side. Also, other fabric options would be crepe, definitely crepe. Duchess could also work fine. Also, a floral fabric can also work fine, like depending on the picture you have in mind. I also will be creating this in plain crepe, definitely. And so I think I've explained the basic fabrics you will need. Now we're going to move over to how I folded this fabric. I'm just going to use this paper here to show you guys. So you see this paper here, we're going to take it to be our fabric. This part is where the yards are measured. So we'll say this is 4 yards of fabric, and then this is the length of the fabric. Okay, so when you're going to fold, you're not going to clap your yards into 2. No, the African print I used, the length was 45 inches. It's not the one that the length is up to 60 inches. Even if the length is up to 60 inches, except you're not all that tall, you can just go ahead and fold it like this. But then, because I want the length to be very long, and as you know, it's a romper jumpsuit, you cannot fold along the yards. You're going to fold the length. Okay, this is the length. This is the length of the fabric. This is where the yards are measured. You're going to fold the length into 2, and it's going to be like this. Okay, you're going to have it very long like this downwards, so your yards is going to be around here, and then you go ahead and cut this part open. This was just how I did everything, and I also lost the clips where I was showing you guys on the fabric, and that's why I came here to show you guys with this paper. I hope you understand, and let's get into the tutorial proper. So this is how I folded the fabric, just the same way I explained in the paper. So you're going to decide which side is going to be your center front, and I'm going to be working on that side. So right there, I'm going to mark 5 inches. Make sure to use at least 5 inches or at most 6 inches for this part. Okay, just mark that 6 inches first. We are going to mark that to the full length, and we are going to make a straight line across that point. I know I could not capture the whole fabric as I would do in my other videos, and that is because my tripod is currently broken, but that will be fixed soon by God's grace. Now we are going to mark from the top part. We are going to mark 1 inch downwards. Now the reason why we need to mark this 1 inch downwards is because we are not drafting a pattern paper. So since we are marking directly on the fabric, we will need to leave some spaces all around so that we can, get our sewing allowance while we are cutting. So it's important to mark that 1 inch downwards. Now I marked my shoulder measurements divided by 2 right on that starting point there, and I came down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. Now on that same starting line, I marked the neck width of the neckline, which I used 3.5 inches, and for the depth I used 3.5 inches. Now I'll connect those 2 points together using my curve ruler as seen, and then from that neck width, I'm going to connect it to meet the 1 inch below at the shoulder slope. Okay, at that point there. So right on that point, I'm going to mark downwards my round armhole measurement divided by 2. Mine gives me 8 inches. So I'll make sure that that 8 inches is sitting at the same spot where the shoulder is also sitting. Okay, remember our shoulder width divided by 2 is 7.5. Make sure that the 8 inches is sitting at the width of 7.5 so that it is very, very straight. So I'll connect those 2 lines together as seen, and I'll extend it to the right side just as seen. Now go ahead and find the midpoint of that armhole line, which was 8 inches. The midpoint is 8 divided by 2, which is 4. I'll go inwards by half an inch there. Now we'll place my curve ruler as seen, such that part of it is touching that point, another part is touching the half an inch inwards, and another point is touching the base, and in one swipe I will get my armhole curve at once. Now we'll move over to the basic points of the bodice. I'll mark from the shoulder to my bust point. Mine gives me 11 inches, and I'll make a straight line across that point. The next point I will mark will be from my shoulder to my waistline. Okay, for this jumpsuit, you do not need your under bust line because it does not need a dart. So just go ahead and mark from your shoulder to your waistline and make a straight line across that point. Now the next line to mark will be from the shoulder to the hip line. Now if you want to get your hip line, place your tape around your hip, and your hip is the biggest side of your bum, okay? The biggest side of that whole area, that is your hip. So once I get the biggest side, I'm going to just draw my chalk on my pants as seen. And now I'm going to go ahead and place my tape from my shoulder to that point. That is going to be my hip line. And then I'll go ahead and mark it directly on my fabric. I'll mark that 26 inches there, and that will be the hip line. And then I'll make a straight line across that point. Now the next measurement to take will be the crotch line. And I'm going to be showing you guys the easiest method on how to get your crotch line. Remember that your crotch line is different from your crotch depth. Now what you're going to do is, using this video on the screen here, place your tape from your shoulder to that point right there. So where there is a division on your body, which is where your tie starts from, that space there, I don't want to call the name, just go ahead and place your tape there. That is your crotch line. That is where your crotch depth measurements will be applied on. Mine gives me 28 inches, but as we know, this is not a fitted pant, so go ahead and add 2 inches to whatever your crotch depth gives to you, because this is not a fitted pant like the one I wore on that video on the screen. This is going to be very loose, so make sure to use 30 inches if yours is 28. Use 30 inches. If yours is 26, use 28 inches. Make sure to add 2 extra inches for ease. Now the next point I will mark will be the full length of this whole jumpsuit, of which I use 62. I wish I'd used 64 instead. Moving on the bust point, we are going to mark our round bust measurements divided by 4, and we'll apply what it gives us right there. Okay, at this point, if you want the top part of your jumpsuit to be free, make sure to add at least half an inch for ease allowance, but I didn't add. I used the exact measurement. You can see from the results that the top part of the jumpsuit was fitted. Now on the waistline, make sure to mark your exact waist measurement. And then on the hip line, for now we are going to mark our exact hip measurement, because we'll be needing it as a guide to get our crunch line first. So my hip measurement divided by 4 gives me 10.5. I will mark it right there on the hip line, and I'll also mark that same hip measurement on the crotch line. Now I'll connect these lines together as seen. This is just the basic bodice formed right here. Make sure to extend that your exact hip measurement to the crotch line. Moving on, the next point to mark will be the crotch depth, and the crotch depth is going to be marked on the crotch line. In order to get the crotch depth, we are going to take our exact hip measurements, the one we divided by 4, which gives us 10.5. We are going to mark that, we are going to divide it by 4 again, and dividing 10.5 by 4 gives me 2.625. Now we are going to mark it outside that straight line on just the crotch line alone, and we are going to extend this crotch line forward. That is going to be the crotch depth of the front piece. Now we'll connect this crotch line to meet this crotch depth to meet the hip line right on that point there. Using the curved side of our ruler, we are going to connect it as seen. So that is the crotch depth of the front piece. Divide your already divided hip measurement by another 4, and you will get the crotch depth. That's as easy as that. Now the longest part of this whole measurement we have here is the crotch line. You would see that the crotch line has the longest measurements because of the crotch depth. Now we are going to find the midpoint of that crotch line, and the midpoint of that whole crotch line, which is now a total of 13 inches, is 6.5 inches. So we are going to mark that 6.5 inches there, indicating that that is the midpoint of the whole of this pants. Now we are going to mark this midpoint down to the full length. We are going to draw a straight line from this midpoint to the full length. Now we are going to take our round thighs measurements, just one of your lap. You are going to take the measurement of it and you will divide it by 2, only 2. So from that crotch line, I'll just come down by 3 inches, and that's where I'm going to mark my thighs measurement. So dividing it by 2 gives me 12, and I'm going to place that 12 on that line. I'm going to make sure that the midpoint of 12 is on the midpoint of that crotch line, and I'm going to go ahead and mark that side, and the other side I'll make sure that I'm marking 12. So that is how I'm going to bring my thighs measurement down to the full length. Okay, it does not matter if it's just the thighs measurement. I know you'll be wondering, why didn't I just make it pencil downwards? Just go ahead and bring your exact thighs measurements down to the full length. So just go ahead and connect it with a straight line as seen. After drawing the lines, I'll just go ahead and clean the other lines inside so that I don't confuse us with too many lines. I just went ahead and cleaned it, and this is what our measurement is looking like so far. Remember, on the hip line we only took our exact hip measurements, which is not supposed to be, but we just needed it as a guide, okay, just to have a view of what this actually looks like. Now that we have all the accurate measurements, we're going to start adding all the allowance and all the necessary ease that we need. So on the bust point line, I'm going to add just 1 inch for sewing allowance. That is what I want to work with. I'll just add only 1 inch for sewing allowance. If you want to add more ease, go ahead and add. On the waistline, I added only 1 inch for sewing allowance. Now on the hip line, I'm going to mark 1 inch for sewing allowance, and then I'm going to mark another 1.5 inch for ease. Okay, 1 inch for sewing allowance, 1.5 inch for ease. That's going to give us that baggy effect. If you want this to be fuller, just reasonably continue adding more as you keep on going down. Keep on increasing the measurement, the allowance, as you keep going down. That same measurement is what you add to your hip line as well as your crotch line and also to your full length. You're just going to take that same measurement and ease measurement down to your full length as well. Now I'll go ahead and start connecting all these lines together. And then on the center front, I'm going to start marking my 1/2 inch sewing allowance. I will mark it all around to the crotch line as well as down to the full length. Just go ahead and mark that out. And then we can proceed to start cutting this out. Don't forget to add allowance to the shoulder part, even though I did not indicate, and also to the neckline area. Go ahead and cut all of this out, and this is what the front piece looks like. So for the back piece, I also folded my fabric that same way, and then I placed the front piece on it. I made sure to have some allowance on the crotch line area, that is the front side, and also on the other side. Now I marked the crotch line and I marked the waistline. Those are going to be the focus points of this. So the first thing we are going to do is, remember that crotch depth extension we added to the front piece, we are still going to add it again to the back piece. We are still going to extend the back crotch by that same 2.625 that we added to the front piece. This is going to give us a full crotch depth at this point, and also the back depth, the crotch is usually more defined than the front crotch. So now that waistline there, I'll just mark it because, like I said, it's going to be a focus point. So from this crotch line, I'm going to connect a slanted line to meet the full length, okay? I'll blend this new crotch line to meet the full length in a slanted form. And then right on that waistline, I'm going to mark inwards. After I leave the front piece, I'll mark inwards 1.5 inch. Now you can mark 2 inches if you want to. The reason why we do that is because you see your back is not straight. Your back is very defined, except you don't have a bum, except you don't have anything behind you. Your back is very straight. You can just go ahead and don't do this part, but none of our back is straight, as a matter of fact. So now we use the curved side of my ruler to aid me to curve this new crotch extension to meet this 1.5 inch that we marked inwards. And once I connect that curve, I'll just use my free hand to make sure that no part is extremely curved or too sharp. And there we have it. So I'll place the front piece back, as you can see, and you will see the 1.5 inch there. Now on this other side of the waistline, I'm going to mark that 1.5 inch. I'm going to replace that 1.5 inch that we have there, and I'm going to try to blend it into, the hip or the full length. Now we're going to lift this front piece from where it is and shift it to these new lines, these new body lines, right? I'm just going to go ahead and trace that other side properly now, because I noticed that whole blending I did was not working well. So now I'll go ahead and extend these other main bodies. I'll go ahead and start, tracing the remaining bodies, the armhole. While you're tracing the armhole, make sure to bring your hand out towards a bit, because the front armhole is usually more defined than the back armhole. And remember that the front piece already has all the sewing allowance already. So now I'm going to create the back neckline, and for the depth of the back neckline, I marked 1.5 inch, and I just went ahead with my free hand to connect it to meet the neckline, okay, or the neck width of the front piece, which is also 3.5 inches. Guys, this is everything for the front piece. You will see the first curved that I tried to do from that waistline downwards. You see that it was not very defined, but after I shifted this, you will see that it is looking way better and even accurate now. So this is what it looks like. I just make sure that I will extend this line right to the full length. Okay, see the way I blended it into the full length. Just make sure it's not too sharp. It can stop at the full length anyway, but just blend it into the full length of this. And now we can go ahead and cut out the back piece of this jumpsuit. So I placed the front piece and the back piece, that is right face facing each other, and I'm just going to, start making the collar for each of them. So for the front collar, I'm going to trace out the neckline on a pattern paper. And right where that neckline stops, I'll mark 1 inch upwards, and where the neckline starts, I'll mark 1 inch upwards. I'll just keep the fabric aside and I'll connect this points together as seen. I'll just make a straight line there. On the front, I'll make a straight line there, and then I'll go ahead and create a curve on the top part, just making sure that everything is, the whole collar is at least 1 inch wide. So now that I've done that, right on that shoulder part, I just first of all, okay, this is the back collar, sorry, I said front earlier, I just wrote B for back. So right on that shoulder part, I marked inwards 1/2 inch, and then I'll connect it to meet the base there. So the thing is, if you don't do this 1/2 inch inwards, this contouring or this clinching of the neckline, you'll see that your collar will just stand there, but when you do it, your collar will be more relaxed. So I draw an arrow facing the shoulder area. Okay, just go ahead and draw that arrow facing the shoulder area, and then we'll go ahead and do for the front collar as well. It's basically the same thing with the front collar as well. So just place your front piece on the pattern paper and just trace out the neckline. And now that I've traced it, I'll mark 1 inch upwards on both sides of this. I'll connect it as seen, and make sure to make sure that everything is 1 inch by creating a curve upwards. And on that shoulder part, I'll go in by 1/2 inch. I indicated F, and do the arrow placement. This is very simple. There are so many ways to do your collar, but trust me, ever since I started doing my collar with this pattern, my collar game has not remained the same. So this is what the front collar looks like with the back collar. So where those arrows are, they are supposed to face each other. So I have to flip the pattern paper so it works. So I'll just keep the collar aside and we'll move to the main dress, and we'll come to the collar later. Starting off with the back piece, I would start sewing this first. I'll place the back piece right face facing the back piece, and then I took the zip that I'll be using. I'm just going to use the zip to know where I will stop sewing. Most importantly, I would advise your zip should get to your hip line. For easy wearing, your zip should get to your hip line. So that is where my zip stopped. I'll just go ahead and sew that 1/2 inch sewing allowance just along the crotch line. Make sure to stop at the crotch line as indicated. Now from that part upwards, we are going to sew a very, very loose stitch there. I am done sewing that point, and this is what it looks like. Remember, from that chalked part upwards, the stitch there is very, very loose. So I'll just open my fabric up and I'll go ahead with my hot iron to give this a good press. I'll open up the seams from inside, so this way all my seams are properly relaxed and properly ironed. Over to the front piece, I placed the front piece right face facing the right face, and from that neck depth, I just marked downwards 5 inches. I just want a little opening around that point, which is totally optional. And so from that chalked point downwards, I'm going to sew a tight stitch downwards. And after sewing it, I'll still go ahead with my iron to open up the seams as well. So for the front piece, the place that I left without sewing, I'm going to use a hemming gum to just fold that place down. And you are going to see that it will give me a very neat and professional look. So just cut your hemming gum and use to hem that part instead of sewing. And you guys already saw the result. Just this is a closer view of what it looks like, and it is very, very neat. So now that I've prepped both the front and the back piece, I'm going to place them right face facing each other, just as seen. And I'm going to take my time and arrange this properly. I'm going to first of all start with the side seams. Remember that the sewing allowance we added all through was 1 inch. We are going to sew that 1 inch all around the sides, okay? Just as indicated, sew only that 1 inch. After sewing it, now we are going to join the shoulders together. We are going to sew up the allowance we added there. And afterwards, this is what it looks like. So the next part I will be joining is the crotch. So the crotch and the inner legs of the jumpsuit. That's the part we are going to be joining now. And so for first thing we are going to do is we are going to take our pins and we are going to clip the front crotch to the back crotch together. And make sure you start pinning from that crotch line. So just go ahead and pin the whole ties together. Take your time and do this very well, and you will see that the length will be equal. Okay, just go ahead and pin the whole inner ties, the whole inner legs, or the whole inner seams together. And remember, it was only half an inch we added to this side, so it's only half an inch we'll be sewing from this part. After sewing the inner side, we are going to now open up that zip allowance that we left earlier. So once I open that part up, I'm going to flip everything over to the right face. Moving on to the collar, I'm going to fold my fabric into two. I'm going to place the collar. I'm making sure that the arrows are facing each other, okay? So I just use my pins to secure them because I was out of tape. So I'll place this as seen on the fabric, and I'm going to just cut, making sure to add half an inch sewing allowance all around this whole collar. And this is just for one side. Now usually I would cut this collar on fold, that is making sure that the center back is on fold, but this time around we are cutting it into two separate pieces, and that is because the jumpsuit has a zip allowance at the back, and also the front piece of this jumpsuit has an opening, so we have to cut this collar piece in two separate pieces. That is, altogether we have like four, because a part of the one side of the fabric is going to be serving as the lining. So I'll just go ahead and cut this collar as seen. I hope you understand. So after cutting all the pieces of the collar, this is what I have. I'm going to place them right face facing the right face, and I'm going to sew it as indicated. Just take note. For the front, the center front, you are going to sew, and you sew only the top part. But you see that lower side, you're not going to sew it. So I'm just going to place the pattern paper so we understand. That is the center front and that is the back. Like I said, the arrow placement are supposed to face each other. So you are going to fold the center front there and also the top part. That is it. So this is what it looks like after I've sewn it. I'm going to flip it over to the right face, and then I'll just take my time and iron this out neatly as well. So this is what my collar looks like. This is what one side looks like. Normally it's not supposed to be in separate pieces. It's supposed to be on fold so that I can get like a full collar, but like I already explained, this jumpsuit has a zip at the back and it also has an opening at the front, so we had to cut it into separate pieces. But nevertheless, I'm still going to show you guys what it would look like if it was a full collar without the zip allowance at the back. I've done this severally in most of my videos. This is how I do my collar and it works really nice. So this is what my collar would have looked like. As we all know, your collar is not supposed to be straight. So now we are going to take this and we are going to attach it to the neckline of each piece. You will see that everything, the measurements will be accurate. It will all fold well. So this is a visual representation of what it should look like. And I'll take it to my sewing machine now. I have said this before that my tripod is broken, and so this is the only way I can show you guys, and my phone was shaking. This was like a whole scare jump for me. And this is what it looks like. This job is very neat. I can't lie, you guys can see for yourself. So this is what it all looks like, and this is what the back piece looks like. Now you understand why I had to cut it in separate pieces. So now I'll go ahead and fix my zip and be back. After fixing the zip, I'm going to give the whole of this jumpsuit a really good press, and I'm also going to give it that is it ghetto line? I don't know. That's how I know it ever since school days. I'm going to give this a really good press. And once I'm done ironing, I'm going to use my hemming gum to hem the base of the legs, and it's just going to give it a more neat and professional look. Like you will barely see any sewing line on this romper jumpsuit. I can't wait to recreate the plain one of these. And let me put you guys on a secret. The only reason why this jumpsuit came out really beautiful is because I kept on ironing. Trust me, ironing has changed the game for me in my sewing journey. And I just hope someone learns and pick something from that. Always iron. I have this rule where if there is no light, I'm not sewing because I need to iron at every step. You can see how beautiful this looks like. And we're going to move on to the sleeves. So for the sleeve, I folded the fabric into two and I'm going to place the blouse on it. So usually this is how I will cut my sleeve, right? I'll place it from the top, but ever since I started placing it from the under, I don't know, my sleeves used to like look very nice. And I know this is a very lazy method, but trust me, I can't remember when last I drafted a sleeve. But just in case you're a beginner watching this video and you want to learn how to draft your sleeve, do well to let me know in the comment section. I'll put out a very detailed video on that, a more professional one, not this lazy method. And so for the length of the sleeve, I use 8 inches. I really considered the length of the sleeve, but last I was, I wish I'd used done a 3/4 sleeve, but you guys, this still came out beautiful. So I just go ahead and cut out the sleeve. That is the sewing allowance there, which is 1 inch. I'll duplicate this sleeve, as I'll cut another one so that I can have 2 sleeves for the 2 armholes of this jumpsuit. Also for the base of the sleeve, I'm still going to use my hemming gum to hem the base. Trust me, hemming gum is so sweet there. If you start using it, it's like an addiction. It makes your job really neat. So I'm going to use the hemming gum to hem the base. Like I said, you will not find any sewing line on this jumpsuit. We hemmed almost everything about hemming of this jumpsuit. We used a hemming gum. So just do that. The heat from the iron is going to glue this together and it's going to give it a very nice and clean look. So after hemming, we are going to place them as seen, and then we'll sew up the side seams, and then we'll proceed to attaching this to the main jumpsuit. All the other sewing lines inside, make sure to weave this. This brings us to the end of this tutorial, guys. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to give us a thumbs up, make sure to share, make sure to subscribe. Most importantly, share, because this will help you to recommend this channel to other people as well. And see you in my next video. Bye.